Bliss, born and raised in Highlands Ranch, Colorado. At a young age, I knew that I wanted to travel the world. And because I knew at such a young age I wanted to travel the world, I was able to start planning at a very young age. And the very first thing I did to sort of help make that dream happen was I went to the University of Montana and I did the ROTC program, which I joined the Army. I commissioned as an officer in the Army, and they paid for my schooling, so I didn't have any student loans coming out of college. And then for the next 4 years of ROTC and then another 4 years of active duty, it was 8 years of me basically working my butt off to make this happen right here. I did school in Montana, went to Fort Benning, Georgia, and from there I was up at Fort Wainwright in Alaska. And basically I'd live at places that were super, super cheap. I'd split rent with a bunch of roommates. I didn't live super lavishly by any means. I tried to basically save almost a half of every single paycheck I had while I was in the Army. And so after doing this for basically 8 years, when I got out of the Army, which was only like a year and a half ago now, I started traveling. I had a bunch of money saved up, and I knew that I wanted to sail. I wanted to sail around the world. And so I found myself in first St. Petersburg, and then I traveled for almost an entire month all the way from St. Petersburg down to Miami, up to St. Augustine, Jacksonville, around the state, until I eventually found Florence here, which is a 37-foot tartan sloop. And yeah, that was basically how I found myself with this boat here. It was a long, long, arduous journey, lots of cold, miserable nights. But this right here is sort of the payoff.
What made you want to sail around the world?
So what made me sail around the world? Honestly, I had no idea about sailing around the world or any ambition for it necessarily when I was younger. I did know really, really young that I wanted to do whatever it took to see as much of the world as possible. And it wasn't until about a year into the Army that I knew that some people were doing it and that it was possible, and something that I'd sort of played around with. And I actually had a buddy bring up the whole, hey, sailing around the world when we get out of the Army. And I did a bunch of research and saw that it wasn't something that was actually like completely unrealistic. And then just with the personality type I have, I became infatuated with it and sort of obsessed with it. And I started planning and doing all this stuff. And at that point, all I could think about for basically the next 3 years was sailing around the world. Preparation for a trip like this is hands down the most daunting task. The best way to describe it is when you first get involved and you start working on finding a sailboat, planning stuff like that, you realize that a trip like this is a massive iceberg, and like for the first year you'll only scratch the surface. You first off need to know as much about boats as you possibly can, different models, everything like that. And then from there, you have to start figuring out the routes. Luckily, I had a ton of different people, a community of people that I either learned sailing from or people that I knew had sailed in the past, and I was able to go to those people. Steve, for instance, one of the crew members, his aunt and uncle, they had sailed to a bunch of different places around the world, so he sent me a large box of different sailing books that I'd used for planning like Cornell's cruising routes. And he sort of gave me sort of a baseline to work off of for planning the route. But it was honestly a 3-year process. And even when I was hiking this last trip that I was on, the entire 5 months, every single day I was writing stuff. Oh, I need to remember to do this. I need to remember to do that. So it was a long, long process, because for sailing especially, you need to plan every single thing that can possibly go wrong. So yeah. And we're quickly learning as we're going. There's still some stuff that I probably could have done a better job of, to be honest. I knew really, really young that I saw so many people that when they were older, their whole lives they had worked to do stuff that was a dream, like this sailing trip. and they'd work their butts off and do everything they could so that they could eventually do it when they were older. And by doing that, you're just putting your chips in the bank's hand, pretty much saying, I hope it works out, but you don't know. I mean, any single day, something could happen. Every single day is is a gift, and you never know if that's around there. You might not even want to do that once you get older. So I knew that I definitely wanted to do this while I was young, and everyone that I talked to leading up to this trip, it's funny, surprisingly, the amount of younger people, my age or younger, thought I was silly or like completely out of my mind. I see where they're coming from. This is a trip that not many people are doing at all. But all the people I talked to, was, older mentors that I had, or family members. Everyone that was older, I didn't have one single person that wasn't just completely saying, I wish I had done that. I wish that was something I had done. Very, very few times do you ever meet people that look back at their lives and say, I wish I had spent more time working. Or it's something important to realize that a trip like this is capable, with it being, when you're a little bit younger, and makes things a little easier. Yeah, without a doubt, the thing I'm looking forward to most on this trip, the circumnavigation, is, a lot of people will sail and they just sail around the world as fast as they can. Or they'll sail places and it's kind of just like make it here, 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 and here. The main basis of this trip, without a doubt, is to just experience as many cultures and see as many things as possible. We're not, racing from point A to point B. We're trying to immerse ourselves as much as possible in this awesome world and these great cruise ships that are around us at all times. But, for instance, right now we're in Nassau. That's why you can hear the cruise ships in the background. We're at this tiny hole-in-the-wall marina, and it's hysterical. But this is the kind of stuff I live for, to be honest. So the main reason that I'm having this trip documented, if I'm being completely honest, is to honestly show that this trip, that when most people hear about it, think is, requires a, ridiculous amount of money or some inheritance, or that it's an unthinkable goal. I'm trying to document this trip to show that this is something completely realistic that anyone can do, as long as you have, if you're able to put in the work, if you're able to, sacrifice a little bit of comfort. This is one of the things that really is essential to the whole idea of like Runaway, Renegade, and that if you've got a goal, something as crazy as this might seem at the outlook, that if you break it down step by step, you can do it. You can do a trip like this. It's completely possible. So that's the main reason I'm trying to document it. The goals for the trip, goal number one is to see as many things as possible. Goal number two is obviously to sail as far as we can. We want to sail, around the world. So to make it completely around, that's a big goal. Goal number three is to just have this sort of lifestyle where we're sort of self-reliant on this boat. We've been catching fish, so we've been able to eat ourselves. The boat is a sailboat, so you don't need a ton of fuel or anything like that. We use our fuel when we're leaving or entering marinas, or if we're in some bad weather like you might see in some of the videos. But it's a very self-sufficient lifestyle, and if you do it correctly, it's very little money. So that's just something in terms of 3 goals that are pretty much the core of the trip. Yeah, I've got some good advice for anyone that's got a goal like this, or whether it's sailboat or anything. Honestly, at the end of the day, all it comes down to 100% is you just have to pony up. Don't be a pansy when it comes to your goals. Like, if you want something, the only thing that stops in your way is you. I promise. This is the key. So if you want anything, you want a trip like this, you're willing to put in the work, want to do whatever it is, just don't be a pansy about it. Get it done. Do the research. Sacrifice a little bit of comfort. Put some money away. Sleep in some baseball fields. That's what I had to do before I bought this stupid boat. And now I'm here. So if you're willing to sacrifice it, you keep your morale up a little bit, and don't be a stupid pansy when it comes to your goals, then yeah, do it. Pony up. That's the key. luckily there's pretty much a cookie cutter route that a lot of people do. It's like sort of the common circumnavigation route. I primarily looked at other people who've done circumnavigations their route, and then I also used Cornell's cruising routes, and it basically breaks it down where you're sailing basically from each summer along really good coastal winds and stuff like that. The only thing that's different, for instance, like what we're doing right now, is a lot of people don't sail in the Caribbean until after November. But in order to sail the Caribbean and then make it to Panama by March for the Pacific crossing, we had to leave Miami like November 1st. So we've had some days of pretty high winds, some bigger waves. But yeah, it's honestly a pretty well-known. This is access. Like, I did a little bit of research for picking our own harbors. I looked at stuff that I want to do myself, stuff that I thought would be fun. Maybe other people wouldn't, but we would. So like snorkeling and fishing and all that stuff. But the general route, you can find that information anywhere. It's all over the place. It's very, very common and relatively easy if you do it right and you have a little bit of patience for going from place to place. The crew members, I wish I could say I had the best of the bunch. Just kidding. No, the crew, honestly, I actually did honestly have basically the first people that were interested in this trip basically to come on. So the first person, Steve, who you guys have seen in other videos, I'm sure. Steve was a buddy of mine from the Army. We had been through thick and thin together. So I brought Steve on, mostly for his good looks, but also for his skills with dealing with problems and stuff like that. Trust the guy with my life. And then luckily, I had someone by the name of Blane reach out to me on Find a Crew. I had put out a thing that I was looking for someone to help document it. I did not have the ability to document something this grand with my iPhone, and I also do not have the mindset for something like that. So luckily, a guy, Blane, reached out to me, and we ended up hitting the jackpot with Blane because he doesn't just film. He's basically caught all of our fish. He's done all of the spear fishing. He cooks everything almost with the lobster and everything else. So, and Florida native. So he gave us the hookup on some of our original crew that we had and how we were getting stuff when we were in Miami. So jack of all trades right there. And we had another crew member, Colin, come that was a friend of Blane's. And then after that, I had sort of put out my general thing. We're looking for a crew. We're looking for people that's motivated. And we had a ton of people that said, yeah, I'm motivated. And then, but they just sort of drop out. Paige was one of the people who was like, yeah, I'm super motivated. And I was like, okay, great. Like, how motivated? Like, I already bought my plane ticket motivated. So that's a pretty easy way to determine if someone's down for it. And I was asking everyone, like, hey, it's going to be rough, especially us starting out. You know, it's going to be a boat that we're going to be figuring out the chinks. I'm not going to lie to you right now. Steve is over in this direction working on the bilge pumps as we're doing this. And but we've got crew coming on. We're always looking for crew. So if you guys think you got a skill that can help us out, you want to experience something like this with us, we want to bring everyone on. All the Renegades, all the Runaway Renegades out there that want to come out here, we want to get you on the boat. We want to experience this adventure with everyone. Alright, so if you guys have enjoyed the content so far and you're enjoying our videos, you want to see more of how you guys can do this and you want to join the adventure, go ahead and subscribe to our videos, tag along, join the Renegade Nation, and come with us as we go to the rest of the Bahamas. We're going to be here for the next 2 months heading out and eventually making our way to Turks and Caicos. It's only going to get better from here. So please follow along. Let us know if you enjoyed the videos. So you'll see in some of the future videos coming, you'll get a better idea of the crew, their personalities, how they find themselves here. And you'll see sort of the motley crew that we've acquired since coming from Miami now here to Nassau.